Good evening. My name is Kyle Wilkins, and I am giving a class on leadership and diversity and ways to improve diversity at the executive level for Professor Mink at Southern New Hampshire University today, June 28th, 2015. As I mentioned, my PowerPoint is on leadership and diversity and ways to improve diversity for the YMCA. The Y's diversity and inclusion statement reads as such. The Y is made up of people of all ages from every walk of life residing side by side to strengthen communities. Together we work to ensure everyone, regardless of gender, income, faith, sexual orientation, or cultural background, has the opportunity to live life to its fullest. We share the values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Everything we do stems from it. Recognizing that a diverse and inclusive organization is foundational to developing and engaging everyone across the entire Y spectrum. Our volunteers, members, program participants, families, leaders, staff, vendors, suppliers, donors, collaborators, and the community at large contribute to our efforts to make positive, lasting personal and social change. Now, the Y seems to have a very good grasp on what diversity and inclusion should be, but they don't seem to execute that at the executive level, which can be a problem, which is a little bit of a problem. But before we get into that, let's go over the history of the Y and how it's gotten to where it's at currently. Currently, in the United States, the Y is comprised of the YMCA of the USA, which is located in Chicago, Illinois, a very diverse city that has a strong racial past, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And more than 2,700 YMCAs with approximately 19,000 full-time staff, 600,000 volunteers, and 10,000 communities across the country. That is a lot of people. Worldwide, the Y serves more than 45 million people in 119 different countries. That is definitely spreading the word. In the early years, the Y was initially started as a refuge for young men to study the Bible and escape the streets. The founder, George Williams, was a farmer turned department store worker that wanted to provide a place in which everyone, regardless of social class, could be free of persecution for their religion, or of their religion. Notice that he said of social class. It wasn't racially based. It was social status, like socioeconomically based. It was founded on Christian values, hence the name Young Men's Christian Association. It was adopted by Thomas Valentine Sullivan, who was a merchant marine, and he brought that back to the United States and opened his first Y December the 29th in 1851. Shortly thereafter, a freed slave named Anthony Bowen opened the first African American Y facility in Washington, D.C. in 1853. The significance of that is that it was quickly established that there had to be a separate facility for African Americans to congregate, if that's a good word for it, because they couldn't go to the other YMCA associations, at least not yet. Fast forward about 20 years, and the first Y for Asians is opened in San Francisco. 4 years after that, the first Y for Native Americans was opened in South Dakota. This is very significant because you had two otherwise unjustly treated ethnicities, and they had their own Ys. Granted, again, at this point, the Y was not integrated. They were still segregated, but at least the Y recognized that these people needed to have their own facilities and took them into the fold. It seemed like the Y, like other nonprofits, kind of followed the tide of what society had dictated was right and wrong. "25 Black Ys were established in 23 different cities thanks to Shears founder Julian Rosenwald. This was very important because there was more the growing black population after the freedom of the slaves. The black population had exploded, and they needed their own facilities. Again, they were separate facilities, but they were still African American facilities, and they were made available by a large contribution from Sears founder Julian Rosenwald, who had the good wisdom to put money into a area that was overlooked. The first Japanese Y was established in 1917 in San Francisco. The reason this is important is because in World War II, we knew about the Japanese internment camps. This would come in handy because there was Y services offered in these internment camps due to the fact that this Japanese Y was opened in San Francisco 20 years prior. Very significant, very significant information. Black Achievers Program was established to motivate African American kids, which is a very good program because every other, well, I wouldn't say every other ethnicity, but black children were being overlooked, and this was still in the times of Brown versus, this is time when segregation was still very rampant, and by establishing that program, it was motivating African American children to go out and get these jobs and do the work, and they would be given something in return. In 1967, the Y decided to ban all discrimination at all YMCAs. Very significant because this was during the Civil Rights era, and it was a well-known fact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used to go to YMCAs in Atlanta to have civil rights meetings, and they would be a meeting place for many black people to congregate and talk about their issues, have church services, and ways they were going to spread the word peacefully on the civil rights movement. In 2002, there was a national diversity initiative established, which led the way to the multicultural leadership development team, which looks for and promotes minorities in executive positions. And in other words, to retain and promote minorities, females in executive positions, which were wholly unrepresented throughout the history of the YMCA. And in 2015, Kevin Washington became the first African American president, CEO of the YMCA of the USA. Became the president of the entire Y organization family. After 36 years of dedicated service, he was hired out of Boston to become the head of the YMCA. He was the 14th president, but he was the first African American, which is a huge milestone and is definitely a push in the right direction for the YMCA to prove that they are looking to diversify their upper management. In the cognitive lens, you can focus on the matrix of domination, which was first coined by Patricia Hill Collins. Its focus is a social paradigm that explains issues of oppression that deal with race, class, and gender, where they interconnect, and how it affects people. The reason this is important because this is relevant due to the fact that women represent only 1/3 of all CEOs and minorities only represent 1/10 of all CEOs. What Patricia Hill Collins was talking about was that matrix of domination was the fact that where race and class and gender intersect, there seems to be a problem. Even though they are separate things, they all seem to be related when they intersect on those three different classes. It's especially important because black females, which she was, seem to be wholly misrepresented when it comes to executive positions. And that seems to be a problem through nonprofits. Now, I wasn't able to find numbers since I believe nonprofits aren't required to report their numbers when it comes to diversity, but the little information I was able to find, that's what I found to be true. There's also the glass ceiling phenomenon, which basically is a phenomenon that references the fact that women and minorities have a hard time reaching the executive level top due to the invisible ceiling, aka the glass ceiling. They can see the top, but they have more difficulty reaching it. And this term was coined because, simply put, what I explained is that there's a glass ceiling. It's like you can see the top, but it stops for them. Everybody else gets to pass through, but they aren't fortunate enough to make it to that level. That is a problem amongst the Y, as clearly represented by the numbers that I had spoken to you before, with the 1/3 and the 1/10 females and minorities. Now, 33% might seem like a good number, but it's only a third. And 1/10 is definitely not a good number. It's only 10%. It's still less than half, and 1/10 is, there's 90% more. So there's ways to improve. My ideas are to push the multicultural development more in order to retain and to keep minorities within the family or the organization of the YMCA. The main focus of this initiative is to incorporate a system that encourages retention of multicultural candidates for promotion to executive positions. The intended targets are underrepresented minorities: Asians, African American, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, and Native American. The other target is the women of all races. It doesn't matter. There definitely needs to be at least a 50-50 when it comes to males and females. Now, it might be harder to achieve as far as minorities because you can't do 50-50. That doesn't add up. But there could be more when there currently is less. I have some suggestions, and I think the Y is actually big on diversity, and I know they are on inclusion. What I am looking for is to improve diversity at the top level. I think they should institute a bigger push on diversity-based classes at all levels. Managers, regional managers, CEOs, etc. should all be in diversity-based classes. Diversity hiring. I wouldn't say blind hiring because you can't really do that, but they have to stop thinking of the conscious when you see a name or you see a resume and you see race, African American, whatever. You start to automatically feel as if they're not qualified for the job. Make better use of multicultural executive development staff team and require that all CEOs and human resource personnel attend the seminars, what I just mentioned. That's what they have to do. Make sure that everybody's involved so everybody knows what's going on so they can see where they're falling short and how they can rectify that. They need to promote Multicultural Achievers Program, which is a program that I mentioned before about with African American children. Now it's all children. Promote the Multicultural Achievers Program where they give and they get something in return. They can volunteer. They might get money for a scholarship. They get recognition. It's all important to get minorities involved in the YMCA system. And sometimes if they get them in, they can retain them and teach them and bring them up through the ranks and hold on to what they need. Stress the importance of retention, what I just mentioned. Retain your talent. You have to, by educating your talent, you can retain them, make them feel important, pay them appropriately. Listen to your employees. I was supposed to interview employees at a Y and get their feedback, but I wasn't able to. And they can listen to the community. Your community, if you're serving the community, it would be nice to get input from that community to make sure that they are receiving the services that they need, what is important to them, as long as it's within the lines of what the YMCA has to offer. In conclusion, the Y has done a pretty good job. They've definitely made some changes, and they want to be diverse and all-inclusive, and they are making the steps. Like I said, president of the YMCA, 36 years of service, Kevin Washington, first African American. Great job. And they're getting there, and they're doing what they need to do. But there's ways they need to make changes to make sure that the women and minorities are better recognized and retained for company purposes. I think they'll make progress in the future. They still, despite the new hire, the Y still shares the same problems that most nonprofits have, and that is retaining their under 30 staff and serving and matching their community. But they are making changes, and hopefully they will get there in the near future with this initiative, and they will push for a better future for the Y, for minorities, and for women in the Y family. My name is Kyle Wilkins. Thank you for your time.